Hello, everyone. This is Chris Zorich, and I want to welcome you to the Zorich Podcast. We have a very special guest on today's show, a true coaching legend, a College Football Hall of Famer, Notre Dame's last national championship coach, and recent recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It's my honor to introduce everyone to Coach Lou Holtz. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Delighted to be with you. You mentioned all those awards and honors. We could mention all the honors and awards you have received. Defensive Player of the Year, etc. But see, here's the difference, Chris. You received those awards because of what you did. All the rewards you mentioned, I received because of what other people did, including yourself and the players with it. So I'm well aware of the fact that as a coach, all you try to do is bring people together and have one common goal and see that they achieve it. And we've been blessed to have some success at it.
Well, this is going to be a very exciting interview because we're actually going to talk about that and kind of how you got into coaching, where coaching has kind of gone recently, but a little bit more importantly, the lives you've affected. So before I start, one of the interesting things as I was doing my research, yes, I had to do research on my own coach because I wanted to make sure that this interview was done properly. There's a quote that's very important to you, and I'd like for you to kind of tell us what this means to you. The ladder of success is best climbed by stepping on the rungs of opportunity. Coach, and that's by Ayn Rand. Coach, can you kind of tell us about that?
Well, most of my life, Chris, I've never been a talented athlete. I've never been into bodybuilding or anything else along that line. And consequently, I've had to make every step along the way. I never jumped over any step. For example, when I did get into college coaching, I started at William Mary in Connecticut and South Carolina and Ohio State. Then when I became head coach, it was William Mary, NC State, Arkansas, Minnesota, Notre Dame, and eventually South Carolina. So I've never really applied for a job, but I always felt this. The best opportunity you have to progress is to do your job better than anybody else. If you do your job well, they're going to come looking for you. I don't care what it is. And so that's all I ever focused on was not my next job. And I've had assistant coaches, Chris, that they arrive at there and they're looking at their next job already, where they can continue to move. Well, let's just go do the job we're hired to do and go from there. But that's not the way people work all the time.
Well, as you talked about kind of what you've done in coaching, I'm going to go back a little bit. And it's interesting because I know Coach Watts was very instrumental in your coaching career. He's actually kind of the one that got you started into it. Can you tell us the story about Coach Watts?
Well, I wasn't a great athlete in high school, but I loved the game. All my uncles had played the game as well. And we were undefeated my junior year, and Coach Watts took the job at Canton McKinley, which was a better job. And before he left in the spring, he came up and told my parents he thought I should go to college and be a coach. And I had never had any intentions of going to college. I wasn't a good student. Nobody in our college in our family had ever graduated from college, let alone attended. So, I worked hard to save my money. I wanted to buy a 49 Chevrolet, and my parents decided I should use that money and go to college. And the only reason I could get into school, my grades were so bad, and that's not an exaggeration, was at the time, if your father or parents paid state income tax, the state school had to give you one semester to prove you could do the work academically. And that's how I got into Kent State. And then I played football at Kent State. Wasn't a great football player by any stretch of the imagination. But my junior year in spring practice, I hurt my knee. Dr. Hoyt out of Akron operated on it, and I got a zipper on it. But I have no problem with my knee to this day. That's 67 years ago. But I could not, because we're on the quarter system, they couldn't do surgery until school was out, which was early June, and it didn't recover in time. So they had me coach the freshman team my senior year with a guy named John Constantine. So there I am. I'm coaching the freshman team, and etc. I go in the Army as an officer in ROTC. And unbeknownst to me, my head coach in college, Trevor Reese, was in the Navy with Forrest Evashevsky. In addition to that, Trevor Reese was an All-American and at Ohio State. Forrest Evashevsky was an All-American blocking back at Michigan. And he called Forrest Evashevsky, unbeknownst to me, and asked him to give me a graduate assistantship. Now, in those days, they didn't give graduate assistantship. But I had one, and that's how I ended up in college coaching, because all I was going to do was get out of the military and get married and go coach at Conneaut High School and teach history and be an assistant coach. That was my life. So everything that happens because somebody else helped you to do it. As I've said, when you receive recognition, someone gave you the opportunity to do so. When you would have all the press around you after the game because of the great job you did, but it was your teammates that helped you do that as well. Right. And so I've just been blessed that people somehow have taken an interest in my life and helped my career. Things that I had absolutely no control over. My high school coach or what Trevor Reese did for me at Kent State. I had no control, nor did I have any knowledge of it, but it turned my life around.
Well, you mentioned kind of getting married and your wife, and I know that I've had a chance to spend some time with your wonderful wife, Beth. Could you tell us how you guys met? Because I think this is a great story.
And what's that, Chris?
How did you and Beth meet? Because I think this is a great story.
My wife?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, well, what happened is she had gone through high school with a friend of ours named Ron Freese.
Okay.
He ran around with our group, but he dated her all through it. It just Ron and Beth are going to get married. Everybody accepted that. And I never had a date in high school and never went to a prom or anything else. So I go to college, and next thing I know, I fall in love with a girl. It didn't work out. She married a fraternity brother of mine. And so all of a sudden, there I am. I'm going into the Army. I'm going into the Army, and it was in March when I graduated. And I go home we had about 7 days before I was to report to Fort Benning, Basic Officer Infantry Leadership Corps.
Okay.
And my friend said, let's go to New York. I've got a week off. And I said, why? And he said, why not? And an hour later, we're off to New York. We went to My Fair Lady. We went to Music Bay. We went to all these different Broadway shows. Well, on the way back, they said, let's stop and visit Beth. Well, Beth was an X-ray technician who had moved to Pittsburgh, where she went through school, was living with some of her friends. And I said, no, I'm driving. I'm tired. I don't know her, and I have no desire. But they prevailed upon me, so we stopped. Well, the next thing you know, a party breaks out. Well, what do you need for a party in those days? You needed beer, which they had. You needed Coke for beer, which they had. And you needed pizza. Well, I had everything but pizza because I had the car, and Beth knew where the pizza shop was. She said, I'll go with you. Well, you go get the pizza. Well, the reason I figured out when we got there why they had me go was because they needed somebody to pay for the pizza. It'll be like $11. I'm looking at But we go back. But what was interesting was it's the first time I've ever spent any time one-on-one with Beth. And it was really amazing. And asked her about Ron. She said that was basically over. She was dating a doctor. She didn't know where that would go. And so And so I asked her out, and I took her out every night before I went into the Army and got out of the Army and resumed the date, etc. So all of a sudden we're going to get married. Now I'm not one of these guys. I never propose. I never get down on my knee. I never asked her father for permission. And the reason I look back and say, why didn't I? I wasn't going to marry him. The report was what Beth said. If Beth said yes, that's all I needed.
Wow.
We sort of go to get married, and I think it was around July 9th. And once again, I was going to take a job at Conneaut High School under Earl Biederman and turn down the graduate assistantship in Iowa. Well, about July 9th, 9:30, she told me she didn't want to get married anymore. She wanted to date Ron again. Well, that infuriated me. And so by 10:30, I had my good friend, Nevis Stockdale. We got my 52 Ford Fairlane, drove all night to get as far away as I could. And that was Iowa. I would see if I could get it. And Nevitt made a great observation. He said, you and Beth have a love-hate relationship. You love her and she hates you. I got there. I got the graduate assistantship. Iowa finished second in the country that year. The sports writer did a lot of favorable ratings about me, which wasn't really deserved. And then my mother was an X-ray technician. Well, my mother was a nurse's aide.
Okay.
In the meantime, moved back to East Liverpool. Kept saying to my mom, have Lou call me. Well, I refused to call her. So she called me, and Chris, those days, girls didn't call boys. Wanted to come see me, and I said, no, I'm too busy, etc. She said, well, you're going to see me when you come home? I said, yeah, if I come home. Well, I had no intention of going home in spring break. And Forrest Evashevsky, I'm watching film one day in the office. He came in. He said, you're going home to see Beth? I said, no. He said, well, let me tell you, absence to love is like fire. A little bit stimulates it, too much puts it out. And then the car, I drove home, and we made arrangements to get married, and we were together for 59 years. Our marriage lasted till she passed away on June 30th this past year.
Right. Yeah, that's a wonderful, wonderful story, and I remember having a chance to spend some time with the both of you guys at events when I was at Notre Dame, and I remember there was a couple times when I would call the house, and you'd answer, and it was actually on Mother's Day, and I would ask to actually speak to her and not necessarily you. So I mean, she was an amazing, amazing woman, and I'm so glad I had an opportunity to meet her, and you obviously had a chance to spend so much time with her.
She was a very special person. I've never heard her say anything negative about anybody, Chris, except maybe me. She's an excellent mother. But she really and truly, I don't know of any wife who has done more for Notre Dame than she did as a coach's wife. She laid the background. She's very religious, very Catholic, did so many philanthropical things and humanitarian things behind the scene. She never did interviews. She never wanted to be in the public limelight, etc. She just wanted to be Beth Holtz, the mother of 4 children. And so she did it in such a grateful way, but you're always proud that she was associated with Notre Dame because she was a very strong Catholic. Boy, I tell you, if she ain't in heaven, Chris, I ain't even going to try. I promise you.
I was very fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with your daughter, Liz. We were really good friends when we were in school. We had a couple classes together, and we also kind of hung out a lot. And just hearing the stories about your wife, Beth, from her was really just amazing. And the type of sacrifices that she made, moving from state to state when you got different jobs. I mean, it was just an amazing, amazing story.
Yeah, we're really blessed, and eventually grief turns to gratitude. And when she passed away, we received thousands of emails, text messages, and I just thought to myself, why did they send those while she was still alive?
Sure.
Just to realize the impact she had on other people's lives. But we always seem to wait till somebody dies before we say, oh, he was really a good guy. Huh? Yeah, she did what? But too many times we don't say thank you and we appreciate everything you've done.
Right.
Too many times
That's
we let that go by, and we should.
That's very true. You've had an amazing coaching career, and you've had some amazing assistants. And what I want to talk about was George Stewart, who I hadn't realized was a player for you at Arkansas. And I met him when he was at Notre Dame as an assistant coach. But can you tell us a little story about kind of how influential he was? And there was a really interesting situation that happened when you were at Arkansas, and there was some controversy, but he was one of the leaders that kind of lead everyone through it.
Well, when I went to Arkansas, the number one prospect in the state was George Stewart, an offensive lineman out of Little Rock Central. And we recruited him and got to know his mom. And just didn't recruit him any different we did you with your mom. And he had a mom and a father. And people tried to buy him. They put a new Cadillac in the driveway, but he decided to come be a hog for me as a freshman. Well, lo and behold, we have a great year. We're going to go play Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, and I had to suspend 3 athletes. We scored 78% of our touchdowns. They take me to court to get an injunction to be allowed to play. Bill Clinton was the Attorney General represented me. We won the case. They wouldn't be allowed to play. But then a lawyer got involved and informed me that there were like 12 black athletes that weren't going to play unless I changed my mind. Well, I went to the media and said, I understand there are 22 black athletes that said they are going to play, but we're going to go play anyway. And they said, well, you said 22. He said 12. I said, well, maybe 10 of them lost their mind. Changed their mind, not lost their mind, changed their mind. But in any event, George Stewart was a freshman then. And I guess, as I hear the story, he was going to be one of those that stood in line with the brothers, and the brothers said, no.
Okay.
You're not going to do that. You're going to go do what you made a commitment to do, and you're going to go play for the individual. We went and played the Orange Bowl 131-6. Well, he went on to become an All-American. He went on to be captain. He was an outstanding leader, outstanding person, never had a problem with him. Well, he drops out of school his last semester to prepare for the pros.
Okay.
He was drafted in the first round by Kansas City, I think it was. In training camp, he hurts his knee and will never be able to play again. So about, maybe a year or 2 years later, his mom called me. Said, Coach, you promised me my son would graduate from Arkansas, and he hasn't graduated. He's selling Fords for a company called One More Ford. And I said, you're right, Mrs. Stewart. Get hold of him. So I got hold of George, said, George, you're going to come up here, you're going to get your degree, you're going to be a graduate assistant for me and coach the offensive line with Larry Bechtel. He said, oh, Coach, I can't do that. I'm making so much money. I said, George, that's fine. You come get your degree, you want to go back and coach or sell One More Ford, that's up to you, but you're going to come get your degree. So he came, he got his degree, but he's an excellent coach. And had just been a graduate assistant. I'm going to Minnesota. And I took him with me. And when I left Minnesota 2 years later, I brought him with me to Notre Dame. And I've never gone back to Arkansas that I didn't call his mom. Just a beautiful lady.
Wow.
And George has been coaching in the pros now. He left Notre Dame, went to coach in the pros. And last year, he was the assistant head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. So still stay in touch with him, not as often as we used to, but just a class individual from a class family.
Yeah, he was very influential in a lot of players' lives when we were in school, and I didn't understand the relationship that he had with you, and it was great because he was kind of that conduit between you and some of the players, and I remember he was also the disciplinarian as well. And when we would do kind of some stupid things, he was the one that was out, 5 o'clock in the morning, making sure we were running those laps. But it just tells about the type of relationship that he had with you, that he was able to follow you and go from school to school. But what's more importantly is when he talked to us, he espoused what you taught him. And I think that that's what's great with Coach Stewart, is that he really listened to what you told him, and he was able to impart that on us. So he was one of the great coaches you've had. But it was so interesting to kind of hear about how you guys met in the relationship that you guys had.
Yeah, he's just a special young man. He still has a place here in Tampa, which he'll probably retire to.
Okay.
Cannot say enough good things about it. But you're right. His relationship with his players, his relationship with people in general, he was a very impressive person physically, like 6'4", 245 pounds, whatever. But he just had a disarming way about him when he was with you. I loved him like a son, and I don't think I could treat him any better than I did my sons. I love George Stewart. If George Stewart called me tomorrow and said, "Coach, I need you to do this," I'd move heaven and hell to get it done.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So one of the things, and you've had thousands of players over the years. One thing I wanted to ask you was, did you ever see yourself in any of the players that you were able to coach? Was there one person? Did you kind of see a situation where you kind of said, "Wow, that was me when I was 18"?
It could have been any walk-on, so to speak. Whether it would be Mike Brennan, although I was a little faster in the toe. And lo and behold, I'll never forget, he's a freshman at Notre Dame, and he says to me in the first spring, "Coach, I might be late for practice today because we have a game." And he was playing lacrosse. He was out in Baltimore, Maryland. And I guess he was a good lacrosse player for what Notre Dame had at that time. And he said, I know I can earn a letter in lacrosse. I'm not sure I can in football, but football is where my heart is. And he was a tight end. We moved him to guard. And lo and behold, when I think it was Grunhart got hurt against Pittsburgh, he started the Miami game at guard and later played 6 years in the NFL. I look at Pat Eilers, an individual that transferred from Yale, walked on, and started off as a rocket Ishmael. I don't put myself in that classification, but just an individual that wasn't really appreciated, but you worked hard and you gained the respect of your teammates. I didn't always gain the respect of the coaches, but I did gain the respect of my teammates, and to me that was very important.
Okay, and one of the legendary coaches, again, selfishly, this is during my era, although I wasn't on the offensive line. Can you talk a little bit? Can you talk with us a little bit about Joe Moore, because he was really influential in a lot of offensive linemen, pros, college, but really, Aaron Taylor started the Joe Moore Award in honor of Coach Moore.
Well, Joe Moore had been fired by the University of Pittsburgh. He had coached there under Jackie Sherrill.
Okay.
At that time, his wife was living in Pittsburgh, and he was coaching at Temple. And he never moved his family. And there was a businessman out of Pittsburgh, became a good friend of mine, spoke very highly of Joe Moore, wanted me to visit with Joe Moore. I visited with Joe Moore and was impressed with him and hired him to work with the offensive line along with Tony Yelovich. Well, he did such an excellent job, and it was different. It was different with the players. One time, players were down there, and Joe Moore smoking a cigarette, and the players were sitting around during practice. And I went down, I said, Joe, what in the hell is going on? And he said, Coach, I'm going to go be a trade. I said, what do you mean? And he said, during World War II, we lived in Pittsburgh by the railroad track. And the troop trains came along every hour. And he said, they woke me up. He said, after 3 weeks, I never heard the troop trains. They still came, but I blocked them out. He said, I'm not going to have these players block me out by continuing it until they're ready to listen. That's just the way he was. He was different, but he got his way across with people. I can't say enough good things about him as an offensive line coach. Did a great job with him, make no mistake about it. But later created some problems at Notre Dame after I left. He sued Bob Davie, et cetera. But I don't know what it is, but it just, after a lengthy time at Pittsburgh, he was let go and ran into some problems at Notre Dame. But great offensive line coach, make no mistake about it. The players loved him. The players were very productive, and that's how you evaluate somebody by.
Very true. So the idea of Notre Dame, and I know you were aware of it when you were younger, and as your coaching career progressed, you find yourself going to the University of Minnesota. And I think what's so interesting is that you had a clause in your contract. It was called the Notre Dame clause. Can you share with us a little bit about kind of how that came about?
Well, what happened is Minnesota was really trying to recruit me there. I think they had lost 18 straight games, and the average score was 47-13. In any event, the program was in shambles. The athletic director was a guy named Paul Gill, and he and his committee came up with 5 coaches, and 3 of them were assistant coaches, and all 5 turned the job down. And so he had bypass surgery on his heart in early December. The guy named Harvey McKay was president of the Alumni Association. He said to the president, I'll go hire you a coach. So he prevails upon me to fly to Minnesota with my wife and the 2 children we had at home, Liz and Kev. We go up there, and he met Beth with a fur coat and never let us go outside. Never went outside. It was about 40 below. Went to visit all the different people. You'd go in a tunnel. Everybody had a garage under our garages. But in any event, we're staying in a suite in a hotel, and they wanted an answer before we left town. Figured that once we left town, we would never accept it. So we talked to my wife and my 2 children, myself, about the advantages of Minnesota. And everybody had their own opinion. Liz didn't want to change schools. Kevin wasn't sure he could like the cold weather. Beth. And finally, I said, we're all going to go into a different room, which we did. We're going to pray for a half hour. And we're going to come out after that half hour and discuss it. Austin, gosh, Chris. After that half hour, we came out. It was the most peaceful meeting our families ever had.
Wow.
Everybody was at peace. Everybody decided that would be a good thing to go to Minnesota.
Okay.
But in my praying, one thing that came to my mind was I'd always wanted to coach Notre Dame. And I knew that making a commitment to Minnesota would be a long one. But Gene Corrigan was the athletic director at Notre Dame.
Okay.
He tried to hire me 3 different times as athletic director at the University of Virginia. So my logic is, if he tried to hire me 3 times, and if we turned Minnesota around, why would he not try to hire me for Notre Dame? So I said, I'd like the Notre Dame clause in. I will not go to any other school. However, if Notre Dame calls, I'm free to go there. but we made this stipulation, provided we accepted a bowl bid first. The logic being, if we accepted a bowl bid, we took a program on the bottom. We brought it to mediocrity.
Right. Okay.
And nobody expected us to get a bowl bid our second year. But our second year, we got a bowl bid to go play Clemson, which we did. We beat Clemson. But it was because of Gene Corrigan and the fact that Notre Dame was struggling at the time.
Right.
And what happened in the first game of the year, my second year at Minnesota, Purdue beat Notre Dame 27-14. The following week, we played Purdue at Minnesota, and they had a very good team, but they're still celebrating their win. And we had them like 42-3 at halftime, and beat them decisively. And I think that game put me on Notre Dame's radar. But
Okay.
their last game of the year was at Iowa, and it was at Iowa. After the game, the Liberty Bowl came in, or excuse me, the Independence Bowl came in and offered us a position in a bowl game to play Clemson. And I said to the athletic director, Paul Gill, really a great human being, I said, Paul, now if we accept that, you understand the Notre Dame clause goes into effect. And he said, I think it's more important for our program right now to accept a bowl bid. And so that is how the Notre Dame clause came about. That's how I ended up at Notre Dame.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, for you to kind of really think about the future in that way, and taking a Minnesota program that was not doing well and being able to put that in your contract, that was not only forward thinking, but that was divine intervention, I think.
Well, additionally, I think I went to a bowl game the year after I left as well. So that meant we had built a solid program.
Right. Right.
Unspoken news.
So this is a legendary. I heard about this from a couple players, but your first meeting at Notre Dame, you're meeting the team for the first time, and it's kind of a small meeting room to the point where the first row, which is seniors, is very close to the actual stage. And my understanding is that when you walked in, the first team meeting, there was an All-American center named Chuck Lanza, who I battled for a long time with, had his feet on the stage. And my understanding is that before you even spoke, you walked in, looked at him, and you kicked his feet off of the stage. And when that happened, everybody kind of shot up at attention. Everybody kind of freaked out. And that was kind of your first introduction to the Notre Dame football team. Was that true?
Well, I hadn't planned anything, but what happened is after they got beat so bad Miami, they came back, and like at 4:00, Jerry Faust could say goodbye to the team. And after he said goodbye to the team, they came and got me. Now I go in and have my first meeting. And I went in, and best I recall, I said something to the fact that I understand you had no decision in who would be your head coach. And if you did, it probably wouldn't be me, because you hear all these crazy stories. But what I want you to understand is I had a choice. And I could have stayed at Minnesota and not moved my family. But I thought if we worked together, we could do some great things. Now, gentlemen, we have a meeting is for one of two reasons. Either to gather information or to disseminate information.
Okay.
Because I'm not a great speaker, I expect you, when I walk in the room, to sit up, put your feet flat on the floor, and look at me in the eye. And I noticed there was feet propped up on the thing. And I kicked them. I kicked them as hard as I could. And I said, son, I knew it was Chuck Lanza because I tried to recruit him out of Memphis.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I knew who he was. I said, son, how long have you been playing football? He said something like 9 years. I said, if you want to play another 9 hours, you'll put your feet on the floor and you'll sit up and you'll pay attention. To me, that was a no-brainer. I didn't do it to make a point. It's just when I walk in, that you should show respect to the head coach to the leader. I'm going to show you respect as well. But, from that point on, I walk into a room, everybody sits up, puts their feet on the floor, and looks at you because I'm not a great speaker. But this is what you believe. And I believe that we could do something special if we work together. But then we had 5:30 workouts in the winter. It's quite cold, and they come in there and had these big cans where everybody go over and throw up. And I could tell that you're going to go through the hardest winter program that anybody's ever gone through. Now, Chris, I kept telling them that. But the fact is, it wasn't that hard. But I wanted them to feel that they had accomplished something
Okay.
by going through this program. Later on, your winter program was a lot harder than theirs. They're used to working, used to
Right.
price, etc. So, all I ever did, I prayed an awful lot that God let me be myself and voice whatever is in my heart. And that I did do. I never said anything to influence somebody or to woo somebody. This is who I am. This is what I believe. And I think we can be successful with this formula if we follow it.
And during that time, you had a kind of small, kind of knobby looking receiver called Mr. Tim Brown. At that time, he wasn't playing a lot. I think he may have started one game before he got there. What was kind of his transition for you? And can you share a little bit about some of the conversations you had? Because within 2 years, he wins the Heisman Trophy.
Well, I remember our first spring practice. And I came off spring practice, the first one, and there's quite a few media. I think there are 3 TV cameras. I wasn't used to that. I wasn't prepared for that. And the first comment is, what'd you think of practice? Well, I hadn't talked to anybody, but I said, that Jim Brown's a real fine athlete. It was obvious. I mean, he was smooth. He could catch the ball. He seemed to have awareness. He just impressed me because I knew where we were on the depth chart. It was like third team. You had Bill Jackson, you had Alvin Miller, you had Mark Green, you had Reggie Ward. All these people were ahead of him. But it just didn't make sense that he would be third team. And so the next day, he came into my office because they published that in the paper. And said, Coach, did you really say that about me? And I said, yeah, Tim, I know a little bit about your background. He was a quarterback in a small Dallas high school. He didn't make All-State. He didn't make All-American. He didn't even make All-City. But he came to Notre Dame. They made him a receiver. He wasn't real confident. And I said, Tim, do you have a drug problem? Well, I said, are you a thief? I said, I have no idea what in the hell is keeping you from being a great football. Because I want to tell you, son, it ain't talent.
Wow.
And he will attribute that to the fact that I believed in him. And the reason I believed in him was he gave me reason to believe in him. He was special. And, we ran back kickoffs. We taught him how to catch punts, et cetera. And, now he's in the NFL Hall of Fame as well. He was just a great talent. He was a great teammate, as you know, being with him. He was just a great person.
So you wound up taking the job a little later in the recruiting process. So your first class wasn't one that you were able to spend a lot of time on. However, there's some amazing individuals that were in that class. Can you talk a little bit about kind of the recruiting process for Tony Rice, people like Dean Brown, people like Michael Stonebreaker?
Well, when we got there, I'm at Minnesota, and there's a graduate assistant there named Vinny Serrato.
Okay, he was a graduate assistant.
Vinny Serrato had something to do, and every time I looked, he's sitting behind his desk. I said, Vinny, I got that done. Coach. Hey, how he got it done? So I go to Notre Dame. I bring him as our recruiting coordinator because he could communicate with people. He had recruited a running back named Tim Couch out of Iowa who started for us. And He came to Notre Dame, and he spent all his time on recruiting. I didn't let him coach a position. And Dean Brown was just a great addition, great offensive line. We recruited Tim Grunhart, who Notre Dame was not recruited at the time. Tony Rice was a type of quarterback that we really liked. And what people don't realize was Tony Rice was a very good student in high school. He lived with his grandma, but he hadn't taken the test. And he said he wanted to come to Notre Dame, and I said, "We'd love to have you." Well, when his test score came in, it was quite poor.
Okay.
And so the admissions officer wasn't going to accept him. And so I went to Father Joyce and said, "Father, this is what happened. I gave my word to him." And he said, "Well, you won't do that again. You don't ever commit to somebody until they're admitted to school."
Okay.
But if Notre Dame gave their word, we honor our word. Now, here's what's going to happen, Coach. He'll come to Notre Dame if he so desires as a freshman. He will not step foot on the football field, nor will he step foot in a football office. He will be tutored. Once he proves he can do the work academically, we're not talking about one semester, we're talking about a whole year.
Wow.
Then he will be allowed to play football. I never thought that he would come under those restrictions, but
Sure.
he did. And I never saw him his freshman year. First time I ever saw Tony Rice on a football field was the start of fall practice. And so you have to attribute a great deal of that to Vinny Serrato in running down to people. But there was a great soccer player by the name of Anthony Johnson. He had some scholarship offers as a soccer player, but not as a football player. But he was a great football player and a great teammate. He played 10 years in the NFL. We recruited Braxton Banks out of California, was a good asset to us as well. So we're blessed to bring good people into Notre Dame, but that's how Tony Rice got there. But the fact that Notre Dame said we give our word, we honor it.
Right.
Now you fast forward it to 8 years later, we recruited a young man who was probably the best athlete I've ever seen in high school. That was the young man, the great wide receiver out of Charleston, West Virginia. And he was
Randy Moss.
Randy Moss. He was accepted at Notre Dame. They admitted him to Notre Dame. He signed a national letter of intent with us at Notre Dame. One of his teammates, Bobby Howard, signed as well.
Right.
Both of them. Well, in May, I guess Randy Moss got in a fight, which happened, and Notre Dame changed their mind. And I went to Father and I said, "Father, Notre Dame gave their word." He said, "We can change our word." But that was the difference between Father Hesberg, Father Joyce, and later on. And Randy Moss had a great career, but his college career would have been greater had he come to Notre Dame because of the type of environment and the people he would have been with. But he also was a very good person. And why did I believe in him so much? When I recruited Randy Moss, I went down to his home. I'll never forget. There were 2 chairs in the living room.
Okay.
I sat in one, his mother sat in the other. Randy Moss sat on the arm of his mother's chair and showed her nothing but great respect. And he'll get along well Notre Dame. But that just happens. But then the following year, we really had a great week. We recruited Tony Brooks, Ricky Waters,
Right.
Ishmael, Derek Brown. I mean, the list goes on and on. So we're blessed that they always said you could stick your head out the kitchen door and give a holler and get 10 All-Americans. But the athletes that you took in to make sure that they would fit into Notre Dame.
Sure.
And blend in well.
So people often ask players about this question. It's one of the number one questions people talk about at Notre Dame. What was your feeling coming out of the tunnel for the first time, and I don't think anybody, or at least I haven't seen it. Coach, I'd like to ask you, what was your feeling the first time you walked through that tunnel for your first game?
Walking through that tunnel the first game, I'll never forget it. It wasn't a case, Chris, where I felt, wow, I'm at Notre Dame, how special this is. Duke Rock, the airport agent, frankly. There wasn't any of that in my mind. There was only one thought in my mind. Am I going to be able to live up to the expectations they have of the Notre Dame coach? Am I going to be able to bring back the glory and the national championships and things like Notre Dame used to have it under Air Force Agent, under Frank Leahy, etc. So it was more, I was nervous, I was scared, because I knew what the demands were, the expectations were, and I wasn't sure I could fulfill. I'm a simple person. Let's go do the best we can on this. And as you know, we played the toughest schedule each and every year. And
Absolutely.
in '88, we beat 6 teams in the final top 10. We beat 3 teams that were number 1 or number 2. If they're number 2, it's because we're number 1. And in '89, Chris, we beat 7 conference champions. But each and every week, you knew you're going to play the very best. They told me that when I went to Notre Dame, that we hope to play the very best. We expect to win, because it's just Notre Dame. That's the way they work. Now they've changed. They've changed their schedule somewhat. I guess that was Bob Davies' wish list, was we ease off the schedule. That to me, it was just every year you opened up with Michigan, you knew you better be better.
Right.
You better
Right.
be ready, because Michigan was going to be one of the top 5 teams in the country every year. And I love Mo Schembechler, but that just went with it. And so as it came, and I don't think I ever reached the point where, wow, I'm talked about the same Beth as Eric Parsagen or Frank Leahy. No, I just hope that we can build this program the way it should be.
So you mentioned 1988, you won a national championship, but one of the big games was obviously our game against University of Miami. And can you talk a little bit about the preparation you went through, you put the team through during that week?
Well, when we were getting ready to play Miami, the fact that the last game before I got there, they'd run up the score, beat them 58-6.
I remember that.
Along that line. So it was a very big game. But I also felt that we had a good football team, and we kept getting better. We beat Michigan because Reggie Ho kicked 5 field goals or something like that. Then we go up and we beat Michigan State after losing our 2 fullbacks. We lost Anthony Johnson and Braxton Banks in the first quarter. We ended up putting Tony Brooks at fullback. He had never played there. So we won that game. And, we go along with like 5-0. We go play Pittsburgh down there in Pittsburgh. They had a quarterback named Darnell Dickerson, outstanding quarterback. They had a good football team. And we're ahead of them. And lo and behold, they scored late in the third quarter. Matter of fact, last play of the third quarter to tie the game. And it was at Pittsburgh. The fans are jumping up and down. And lo and behold, Tony Ray said, "Boy, this is a great game." I did. We'll find out if we're any good. And we won it by 10. But we lost our 2 guards. So we go back. Now we're playing Miami. I called Bo Schembechler, who had played us and Miami.
Okay.
And I said, "You played both. Do we have a chance?" For a while, he was quiet, and he said, "Yeah, but you're going to have to play awfully well." He said, "Coach, I'm really a talented team." So looking at it, I just felt that we came up with a game plan on offense, that we had some skilled people, that we could do different things. So lo and behold, we go there the week of the game, and we had that luncheon. That's when the priest got up and said, "I'm the team chaplain at Miami." and I'm a Catholic priest, and we've won 30-some games. We'll win tomorrow, and God doesn't care who wins the game. And when I got up, I said, Father, I agree with you. God doesn't care who wins the game, but I promise you, his mother has great interest in still broke the people. We don't have the pepper. I don't know. So many people would be pepper we had at the Stepping Center. And
Remember that?
don't forget, the microphone wasn't in real good condition. So the only thing I could say, I want you to do three things. Tonight, I want you to go home and get a good night's sleep. But tomorrow, I want you to cheer louder than you've ever cheered before. Number two, I want you to conduct yourself with great sportsmanship as you've always done. The third thing I want you to do is go tell Jimmy Johnson you're going to beat his ass like a hot dog. Next thing I know, let's go back to our meeting with the players.
Right.
Never forget this. Now, why did I say that? I felt it was important for our players to believe. Who's going to make an interception? Who's going to recover a fumble? Who's going to throw an interception? So next thing I know, we got 9 turnovers. They have none. Oh, this game's over. We're going to win. So we went down. We stayed at Plymouth at the Holiday Inn. We come back and we get involved in the game, and we have the fight before the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not caused by us, but being the host, we should have avoided it at all costs. Because that was the Notre Dame way. They want to run over you. Yeah, thank you, sir, for doing that. You said, well, that wasn't our mentality of our team.
Right.
Our team was, we ain't taking any nonsense. And so they have a big brawl in the locker room. And I never talked about this for 15 years, but the players did. I never denied it. But I said, conduct yourself as gentlemen. If you don't conduct yourself as perfect gentlemen, you'll not only play this year, you'll never play again for Notre Dame. And I ad-libbed. I said, after the game, if they want to fight in the parking lot, that's fine. If they do, you say Jimmy Johnson's asked for me. I didn't get another word out. Well, it was a great game, but I also told you, somewhere in that game, Miami would flinch. Like flinch, and they would have to do something they felt that they had to do something special to win the game. It was in the third quarter, about the 40-yard line, 4th and 4, they ran a fake punt, and we stopped it. Next play, we hit Ricky Waters on a corner route, and that really was the deciding point of the game. But here's the point. We never lost again all that year. We went undefeated the next year, and we went down and played Miami down there. And if there's one game I would like to coach over, would be that game. Because I was so aware of Notre Dame's worried about, I guess it is, I don't know exactly the word, but Notre Dame wanted to protect its image, so to speak. And in that game, we walked into a good football team and a terrible attitude, terrible hostile environment. And I had our team so subdued. Instead of being fired up, take no prisoners, they think they're good, we think we're good, let's go find out who. That mentality, there's no doubt we had a better team in Miami. But because of the year before, worried about Notre Dame's image, I had that football team so subdued. Mm-hmm. It was unfair to them, and that's something I regret to this day.
Wow, that's the first time I've heard that. That really means a lot. Really means a lot. Yeah. When you talk about the influences that you've had over people, the impact that you've had on lives, you've had a huge impact on my life. Outside of Beth and your family, but who do you feel has impacted you the most throughout your career and your life?
My Uncle Lou.
Okay.
He was, when my father went in a service in World War II, we moved to East Liverpool to live with my mother's parents. My Uncle Lou was 10 years older, a junior in high school, football player. he was like my older brother. He's like my father because those 5 years I wasn't around my father. We just became close friends. He at Notre Dame in 11 years, he missed one game. That was my first year. He attended every other game. He was just an outstanding individual. But God, I prayed a lot, and all I tried to do, Chris, was get people to make good choices. And you'll make good choices if you follow three simple rules. Rule number one, you do what's right. You do the very best you can, and you show people you care. And you follow those three rules, you always make good choices. And I've always tried to simplify things. We're never very complicated what we did, but if we could simplify it where people could understand it, they could do it, we would have a chance. That's the same thing about life. We complicate life, and we really don't have to. But those three rules, I've never needed a fourth rule. I've tried to follow them for 45 years. They've never let me down.
Wow. Can you share with us your favorite moment in coaching? It could be high school, college, or wherever it was. But what did you feel? And again, you had so many. What do you feel that one of your favorite moments were?
This is going to sound crazy because I had so many of them. I think beating Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl was certainly one of them. But I think it was I was a graduate assistant.
Okay.
The last game of the year, we played Notre Dame. Now remember, we finished second in the country. Notre Dame wasn't very good in 1960.
Okay.
And Nick Giacone, a linebacker. And we beat them 28-0. And I'm on the sideline at Notre Dame as a graduate assistant saying, wow, this is a highlight of my coaching career. I'm on the Notre Dame sideline, even though I'm a graduate assistant,
Wow.
on the wrong side. But I thought that was as good as it got, was to be able to compete against Notre Dame on Notre Dame's campus. It was a special time. But I had so many great moments in coaching. I think beating Colorado after we lost to Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado was a better football team than Miami, and we beat them 20-6. And what I remember about that game was that, Chris, they had never been stopped inside the 10-yard line of a touchdown all year, not once. Early in the game, they have first down and goal to go on the 2.
Mm-hmm.
4 plays later, we took over on the 6. And that really turned the game around. But 89 was the best team I've coached. I thought 89
Wow.
was a great football team. And just the one time where I had led a subdued football team, which was my fault.
Okay. And we're going to be wrapping up very soon, but when you talk about putting together a staff, or let's say like a management team, what is it that you look at in the individuals that you want to bring on your team or on your management team?
Well, as a player, as a coach, I wanted the same things in both of them. I wanted somebody that aspired to achieve something with their life. In other words, just getting to Notre Dame wouldn't be the end of it. I wanted somebody that you could trust. I wanted somebody who was totally committed to excellence and wanted to be good. I wanted somebody who genuinely cared about Notre Dame. Now, what not many people know, it was at 87, your freshman year, we are invited to the Cotton Bowl to play Texas A&M. We go down there, and Tony Rice had led us, but that was because Terry Andresiak hurt his shoulder against Pitt and couldn't play the rest of the year. He could play in the bowl game, and I started Terry Andresiak, and we threw the ball far too much. We're ahead 10-0 late in the first half, and we had a rule: you can't play man coverage without free safety outside our 30. They hit a slant for 80 yards and touchdown with like a minute and a half to go. They kick off. We're at 10-7. Okay, let's protect it. We throw a screen to Braxton Banks. It's incomplete. The referee ruled it was a fumble. And they go in and they score. They score 2 touchdowns in like a minute and a half. And we're down 14-10. We end up losing the game. But it was first time they were in a major bowl. But I'll tell you what I remember. I remember going in that locker room. We had one player crying because Notre Dame lost. And that was Chris Zorich. You didn't even play in the game. You didn't even play all year. And you didn't play because you thought you were a great linebacker. And I thought you were a great defensive. And you fought everybody at practice every single day. The next day, I had to get on an airplane and fly to Japan to coach at an all-star game. 16-hour flight. And during that time, I said to myself, I'm going to put people on that field that care as much as Chris Zorich did. And that was our stipulation. If you genuinely cared, that was going to be number one, more important than anything else. And that's why we put you at middle guard and started you for 3 years, and what a great career you had. But that's the type of person, the type of teammate you were. You were great. Your performance against Miami in '88 was incredible. Matter of fact, early in the ball game, you hit a ball carrier head on. I don't know if you remember or not. But just sort of set the tempo for the whole game. And Chris Walsh even said after the game, he said we could not handle the pressure that their defensive line gave us. They weren't used to having that happen. So,
Right.
Yeah, it just, you have certain things you believe in, Chris, you try to honor them.
There's one more question I have, and it's really kind of really instrumental, and I think a lot of our success. But a gentleman by the name of Bart, I believe his name is Bart Tim, shared with you his philosophy on what's important now. And I think that's so amazing because not only have I, but I know a lot of players have kind of lived their mantra, their lives around this idea of winning and what's important now. Can you explain a little bit about that to us, to our audience?
Well, what's important now, I think I did with Bart at Notre Dame.
Tim, yeah.
What's important now? Win. And what's important now tells you to evaluate the past, focus on the future, tell you what you have to do in the present. You want to win a championship? What's important now? You wake up in the morning, get out of bed. What's important now? Eat breakfast, eat stretch. What's important now? Go to class, sit in the front row. What's important now? Get in the weight room to get stronger. Not because somebody's looking. You're out Saturday night and there's booze, drugs, sex, and heroin. You want to win a championship? What's important now? You better eradicate yourself from that type of environment. You're in a football game, you just recovered a fumble. What's important now? Find a way to score. You're in a football game, you fumbled. What's important now? Make sure that you're going to keep them from scoring. It just really focuses on what you need to do at the present. And if you ask yourself 25 times a day, no matter what you want to accomplish, what's important now? It'll tell you exactly what you have to do. It's not nuclear physics.
Coach, this has been amazing, and I want to leave with one story. A lot of people don't know. I don't think I've ever talked about this publicly, but I don't know if you remember this, but it literally changed my life. I'm not sure what year. I think it was my freshman year, and it was an away game. And when we would have our away games, we would have a mass, and then we would go on to have breakfast, and we'd go on to the game. And during the mass, it was voluntary. Folks would come in if they wanted to or not. And I was in there. I was sitting in the back. There were maybe about 3 or 4 players there, and you were there. We also had a priest, and you asked me to read a verse. from the Bible. And for those folks who don't know, I had a severe stuttering problem since I was a little kid. I was kind of shy, really didn't talk a lot because I really couldn't. And my mom tried to help me out a little bit as best she could. I would read to her, she would read to me. And I was sitting in the back, and you said, Chris, why don't you come up here and read a verse? And I froze. I literally thought I was going to have a heart attack at 18. I was going to die. There's no way this would ever happen. I got up there, and it took me about maybe 15 minutes to read maybe one sentence or two sentences. I sat down. You didn't say anything to me. That Monday, you called me into the office, into your office, and you said, Chris, here's a person I want you to call. I want you to call this person, and I want to help you with your stuttering. And I was kind of shocked. I called the person. The woman her name was Kathleen Weber, and she was a speech therapist at St. Mary's College. And I went there as a freshman, spent time with her. She really assisted me in overcoming my stuttering. You didn't have to do that. And a lot of people don't know how that affected me. But more importantly, I'm so grateful that you chose to do something you didn't have to do. And that changed my life. Because when you can't talk, you can't express yourself.
What you don't know, Chris, is we had to get permission from the NCAA to get you help. And Dick Rosenthal, the athletic director, helped us go through to get permission that, we want to make sure we're not in violation and anything else, but it was obvious that we could help you, and that was our obligation. We got permission. That's how it was set up, and I'm proud of you. We didn't do anything. You accomplished it with your hard work, etc. And I will grant you, that was painful to listen to. It worked out very well, and here you are. You have a podcast with me for you've done well. So.
Coach, there's not enough words in the dictionary to express my love and gratitude for you. You changed my life. Not sure where I would be had I not been recruited by Notre Dame and had a chance, even though, we kind of had our rumbles when I wasn't sure what was going on in practice. And I kind of took out that frustration with the person in front of me. You kind of expelled me from practice several times, but I had to learn. And you've taught me so much more in my life that anyone has. And I think one of the great lessons I've learned, and this is with football in general, is that regardless of how hard the circumstances are, you have to get up and experience the next day. And all the adversity, in football, you get knocked down, you get up, you got to do the next play. I mean, you've taught me so much. I just want to say thank you so much for what you've taught me. And I know there's thousands of players out there that feel the exact same way.
Well, I can't thank you enough for what you did. You did far more for Notre Dame than Notre Dame ever did for you. But it's a pleasure. We're always here for you, as I told you. You do what I asked you to do for 4 years. I'll do what you asked for the next 40. And thank God the 40 are almost up, but not yet. So when they said, would you appear with me? Absolutely. Chris requests something, we honor it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Coach. And
thank you for having me.
I don't know if you can see in the background, but I have my Coach Holtz statue and also the book. So, Coach, you meant the world to me. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. Call me anytime. Remember, you have a problem, you call me, then you call 911.
All right, Coach. I love you.
Love you. Bye.
Okay. Yes, sir.